work from the screen if it's better for you.
Okay, perfect.
Need help, Mike?
Okay.
Karen Black, who's working with the county, she's going to be reaching out to you about the interior work at 210 Northampton, just so you know. I just gave her your email.
All right, let me get out of your faces so I get water and get ready for you. They reset, Linda? Linda, is that a reset or is that still from us? That's true. The recording? Okay, hang on. Hi, Peg. How are you? God willing, yes. He's one of my all-time favorite artists, and as long as my dad is stable, I'm gonna be there. Yeah. Oh, you're gonna miss it? Well, we have another one coming in July on the canal boat. Yeah, that'll be fun. Oh, she's the biggest groupie for this one. Seriously, should I never answer his office? I don't care. But I was told don't spend. But he's on executive, so he doesn't have a copy of it.
Yeah, those things happen.
Sorry I missed you, Bill.
Good grip.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to call our Economic Development Committee meeting to order. And at this time, it's open for public comment. Seeing none, we have a few presentations tonight. Discussion regarding the establishment of the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, or CPACE program. And bear with us here, and Mr. Hartney will move us forward.
Good evening, Council. So in your packets tonight is a resolution that would authorize the county to establish the program and enter into a cooperation agreement with the Sustainable Energy Fund. That agreement has to be negotiated, but what I've also passed out to you are the executive summary of the CPACE program guidelines. If anybody wants a full copy of the guidelines, we have those. I think some folks got them at a conference, CCAP conference. So that's for your information, but what we're looking for tonight is for you to pass a resolution authorizing us to move forward with this. And with that, I'll take some questions. We do have the Sustainable Energy Fund here if there are any technical questions that I can't answer.
Well, there was a Holly something was here.
Holly's on her way. She's stuck on 22.
Oh, imagine that.
Yeah.
I know, right?
It was very informative at the CCAP. I'm really glad Ms. Zarinsky and myself were there, and there was 4 presenters. So we really learned
They
the
were
nuts and
awesome.
bolts of this program, and then they talked about all the other states that had a lot of success, and it's something that kind of like starts out and then has to kind of take off, and I think the lenders are the ones that do most of the marketing.
Correct. The
Yeah.
lenders and the
Right.
Sustainable Energy
Okay.
Fund. We would market it as like a tool in our toolbox through our department as we interact with businesses, but primary marketers are going to be lenders and the Sustainable Energy Fund.
But I would be glad to hear from someone, the gentleman there, if he would like to present anything, have any information, or however.
We don't have a separate presentation.
Oh, okay.
We gave
We
the
did that.
presentation
All right. I got
last
you.
month.
All right.
It's just
So any questions then?
any
from
questions on the
council? Okay.
resolution.
All right. I pretty much have all my questions answered. That was at CCAP and some of the conversation I had with you and Ms. Smith. So, anybody have any questions on the CPACE program? Did any counties adopt it yet?
We would be the first, John.
Oh, wow.
I know, it's exciting,
Because they
right?
did talk about Lancaster was, they
I'm
thought
so
maybe
surprised Lancaster
Lancaster.
isn't.
There are a number that are in the process of
Okay.
doing it, but we would be the first probably by a couple weeks.
Are businesses required to get into this?
No, this is
This is
totally
just
optional if you're making energy improvements to your business that qualify for the program, and part of the program guidelines identify what
And then they'll get some money?
qualifies. They would choose to do that, and this is just a way to finance it.
So it wasn't residential or
But are we gonna-
apartment buildings?
It's not residential.
Not residential.
Right.
No, it's
Just
commercial.
Right.
It's,
Yep.
that's what's in the name. But these were some of the projects: energy saving, renewable energy improvements, water conservation measures. The energy saving measures are really interesting because, I mean, it's like LED lighting for like street lights and the traffic lights and all the lighting. That actually could save municipalities a ton of money. There's a program in Ohio that I'm aware of where they have an efficiency program like this, where they come in and they do the audit and they look at every cost-saving measure that you can have. And with all those cost savings and then implementing renewable energy improvements and all the water conservation measures that also go in this program, you actually save so much more than you're spending, and that you're even on the interest on the loan. So the idea is that this is very cost effective for the county, municipalities, and it's a sustainable measure that's going to help us move into the future. Just saying.
I had a couple of questions. The first one is we're entering into this agreement with PP&L, Sustainable Energy Fund. Why did you choose PP&L, and were there other options? Was this done through an RFP or a competitive process?
There wasn't an RFP. The Sustainable Energy Fund kind of took the lead in creating statewide guidelines. Part of the challenge with a program like this, technically every municipality in the Commonwealth could adopt their own program with their own guidelines. So this was, but the problem with that is that you don't get the lending network, because if everybody's rules are different, they all have to figure out how they can make the loans. So this was kind of a concerted effort from the Sustainable Energy Fund to create this and create statewide guidelines that all of the counties will adopt.
So regardless of whether you're in, like where I live, we have Med Ed, you would participate in a PP&L Sustainable Energy Fund, regardless of who your provider is?
Do you want to explain how? Explain it. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out.
Mural first.
John Koslow, the president of the Sustainable Energy Fund. We were created in 1999 through an electric deregulation settlement, and we were originally funded from 1999 through 2006 by PPL electric ratepayers. That's where the PPL ampersand L comes from. But we're an independent nonprofit overseen by the Public Utility Commission. We have no relationship with PP&L whatsoever. There's no corporate relationship, foundational relationship, or anything. It was just where the funding came from to start the fund.
Okay, well that's in the resolution, so that was my question, because not everyone in this county is served by PP&L, so.
Yeah, it's independent of where their electric service comes from.
Okay. Then my other question, this more relates to fiscal. It essentially creates a lien on a property. Should a property go into foreclosure, do we have the mechanisms, or will we be putting them in place when properties go through a foreclosure process to recoup the costs?
So my understanding of this is that if somebody would default, it's the same as not paying your taxes, and they would go through the same collection process. So if somebody doesn't pay their county tax bill, that's the process that we would go through to collect the funds.
Okay, so another lien is created on the property that would have to be adjudicated through the foreclosure process that we do at the sheriff's sale. Okay.
But we're not on the hook for that money at all.
Correct.
If we don't collect it. But we do get paid for the administration of that.
And as long as we put properties through our normal collection process,
We'd be doing the work
okay.
anyway.
Right. And it's transferable, from what I understand,
Right.
to
Right.
any other owner who would buy the property.
correct.
What are you groaning about?
Whose question is that? A sheriff's sale. Maybe you see the lien, and the lien holder buys it back like the mortgage owner. Maybe fees all the liens that are junior to that lien. They buy it free and clear of any other liens. The only liens that attach are taxes. So if you have 3 mortgages on the property, and the first mortgagor forecloses, but the second and third liens are the fees. Now, if the second mortgagee forecloses, he does not defeat the first one, but he may defeat the third.
What? Wait a second.
So,
Can you explain that, Holly, or someone? Not that I don't think that this is accurate.
It actually goes ahead of the first mortgage lien, but it does not accelerate. So part of the statute is non-acceleration, so only the payment due that year is what's accountable for. The future payments actually transfer to the future property owner.
Does that help you?
Don't meet your concern. What you
Yes.
said is the act controls, and I haven't read the act. But what you said was that we expected it would not be unless what you just said that the act makes it a secret.
Well, that was one of the questions that I asked at CCAP too. So I think that's why I just assumed that that was status quo. But that was a good point, and I know exactly why you groaned.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor.
Part of his job description.
Thank you for your clarification. Okay, is that it? Any other questions on the CPACE, or I guess how, yes,
I'm not on your committee, can I ask?
absolutely.
Based on what you said, so there's absolutely no downside to this. Everything is sunshine all the time.
Not for us. We're just the
Well, that's my
pass-through.
question, there's no downside. Whenever we're gonna get involved in something,
We're taking on another administrative activity, if you will.
and we feel
But
we can handle
we
it.
can be reimbursed
I know.
For that. And we,
I get it, but I mean, you're taking it on.
Yes.
And you feel comfortable.
It's a potential downside, and we've checked with fiscal, and they feel as if they can do that.
Everybody feels they can handle, I know we're getting the money, that's
right,
great, but.
we feel there's very little risk with it.
But I
So
had-
that is a potential downside.
But I had asked one, I think when Holly was here before, whether or not you thought it would require hiring a new person, and you said it wouldn't even require hiring anybody, that you felt that you could take care of it in-house with the staff that you currently already have.
That's what fiscal tells us.
And that's what I want to remember, so when we get to a budget, somebody says, well, we need this because, I can go, wait a minute.
Just
What
etch,
happened in the past?
etch that in your brain and just pull it out whenever you need
I
it.
pulled out a lot, thank you.
There's a lot of reward. It's a nice tool to have for the businesses and the jobs it may create and the energy it will save. And if you don't have the tool, then, so I'm definitely in support of it. And but anyway, I don't know what you want to do next here.
I think.
Do you have
you
a
need to
presentation or?
Vote on.
Whether or not it'll go.
Oh, because you don't have any more on this then?
No.
Correct.
Okay,
So
all right.
I think you need to vote on the resolution, whether to advance it to full
Oh,
council.
well, yeah, we have to move it out of committee, absolutely. I didn't know if you had anything else on this particular topic.
One more question.
Question on the topic.
One more question. Do we know who the lenders are yet? I mean, it's not just the Sustainable Energy Fund. We don't have the vendors yet. I mean, no, right, but you will, so lenders will be converging on Northampton County now to bring the money here. Is that what you're saying?
There's a trade association called sorry. Holly Ettinger, the Sustainable Energy Fund. There is who would know, there's a trade association for capital providers for CPACE called the CPACE Alliance. This does happen in several other states, so these lenders work in other states. But we have an open market in Pennsylvania, so it would be up to a property owner to find the lender that makes sense for them.
Oh, so property owner still has to find a lender. So if they go
Yeah,
to like
but there's-
ESSA Bank and they say, hey, ESSA,
Yeah.
give us a loan.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
totally feasible.
It is. It
Now,
is.
this is just for commercial properties. So could municipalities do this too? Like, let's say some borough wants to put solar on their municipal building.
They probably do better with like a municipal bond.
Okay. So totally commercial.
Yeah, but there's
Awesome.
a list of lenders on that CPACE Alliance website that.
So go to there.
Yeah, there's a ton of them. They are also calling and saying, what county adopted it, what county adopted it, so.
So are we the first?
You are.
We
Well,
are the Well,
Yeah.
we're,
Chester County has it on their agenda for the 14th.
Lancaster?
Chester.
Oh, Chester?
But we're gonna do it first, right? So,
Well,
I don't
we'll
know
see
what
tonight.
happens tonight.
we'll see. Roll the dice. Let's see what happens.
Thanks.
I'm excited. Property. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair.
CPACE Alliance.
Question?
Just one thing. We're, CPACE financing amounts in Pennsylvania program is 10,000 minimum. Okay, is there a cap? I don't know if that's the right term to use in this this kind of...
The limits are really imposed by the capital providers. Even though there's a $10,000 minimum limit, in Texas, which has the smallest loans to date, the smallest loan has been about $50,000. So it tends to be, the average size project's about $250,000, and in Ohio, within the last 6 months, they closed one for $10 million.
So there's no, it can be as much as it needs.
Correct.
To the lender.
It's up to the lender, and
Okay.
if they have a first mortgage on the property, it also goes through the bank. So
That's
the bank
exciting.
has to say, yes, we feel this is a good, solid investment for the property.
Okay, if I may.
Sure,
Here's
please, you have the
here's
floor.
the second part of a dumb question, okay? If a company takes the money and they're doing fine, and then they get in arrears on their expenses, I don't know, costs, let's put it that way. Let's say they start owing things, okay? And there's a process for that. Are you involved in that process, or does that go through the county itself?
It goes through the county.
Just as it would if you were in arrears in your taxes?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
But SEF is the project manager. Program manager? Program administrator. Oh, not project manager.
Does anybody else have any questions for that gentleman?
For John.
John. Okay, motion to move out of committee for full council vote tonight.
I'll second.
All right. Okay, next on the agenda?
Exciting.
So moved.
Moving right along.
Next, we are happy to introduce Alan Jennings. I'm sure most of you have met him. He is the Executive Director of Community Action Committee of the Lehigh Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, everybody. Haven't seen you all in a while. This is something you got in the mail a few months ago, but if you don't remember, or if you have any...
Thank you.
There you go. I'm happy to be here. Good to see you, Kevin. There you go. We've been very close partners with the county, especially since Lamont McClure has become county executive, and I'm proud to say that. So I'm not a PowerPoint kind of guy, but everybody else is. So I mean, I'd be a paper point kind of guy. So that's the paper point, and this is the wing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So just some quick background information on the agency. We've been around since 1965. It was part of the Johnson administration's War on Poverty. I've been there since 1980, believe it or not. That's 38 years of my life I've put into it. The agency is a $25 million annual budget. We've got over 100 employees, 60% of which are people of color. Only 9% of our budget is administrative costs and fundraising combined, and only 20% of our funding comes from government sources. That's pretty much, there are 1,100 community action agencies in the country, and I can guarantee you there isn't one that has even 50% of its funding from non-government sources, and we're at 80%, and that's been very deliberate. We come from a values-based kind of approach, and I want to just get a few of what I think are the key points about how and why we think the way we do. First of all is that charity is what a society does when there isn't justice. And what we do at the Second Harvest Food Bank is basically charity. We give out food assistance through a network of 200 nonprofits around 6 counties, including 4 to the north. I wish we didn't have to run the Second Harvest Food Bank. I don't think anybody should have to stand in line and kind of deal with the shame of needing food assistance from somebody. I'm very proud of the Second Harvest Food Bank, but I hate that we have to have it. So charity is food assistance when you're hungry. Justice is a job that pays that pays the bills. Charity is a homeless shelter. Justice is an affordable apartment to live in. And we're much more interested in charity than we are, justice than we are in charity. Secondly, one of my slogans is, we don't do anything for anyone. I hope you get that point. It's basically to teach someone to fish versus give them a fish with CACLV attitude. And we're really interested in, I mean, our thinking is if somebody leaves our care and hasn't learned to solve their own problems, we've failed as an organization. So we want people to leave our organization, like the 6th Street Shelter, we want them to leave understanding how to solve their own problems, because we won't take them back. They've got one shot at that situation. Next, I'm going to skip to the last one before I do the third one. Human services approach is essentially, in my judgment, blaming the person who's got the issue. You know, sir, you're not making it work. Sit down, shut up, let me tell you how to get your act together. You know, 30% of the homeless adults in the Lehigh Valley enter homeless shelters with jobs. 70% of them have high school degrees, the equivalent or better. They're playing by the rules. The problem is the system isn't working well enough for them. So for me, human services is not the solution. Sure, people make bad choices. We all make bad choices. Most of us have somebody we can fall back on. Poor people don't. We do human services. That's not the solution. Secondly, the old approach to poverty, and I think for many people it still is the idea of getting you out of the ghetto. And we'll leave the ghetto behind. We're going to get you out. Well, my feeling is if you take the winners out and leave the so-called losers behind, you're conceding the permanent ghetto. Our approach is to try to make the neighborhoods a viable place where people own their own home, own their own business, are bought into the civic life of their community. And so the winners stay, and there are no losers. I think we need to have a better understanding in our system of the marketplace. The marketplace prevails, and if we don't figure out how to make the marketplace work better for everybody, we're in trouble. And so my point is that you can't have a functioning community without a functioning marketplace, and you can't have a functional marketplace where everybody's poor. And so I would take that on to the gentrification, schmentrification point, which is that people who are and people on my side of the political spectrum are the ones that are outspoken about gentrification. I think that's baloney. The people who live there have a right to have some equity in their home. If the neighborhood is improving and your property value goes up, that's a good thing for the folks who live there. And for the poor folks, get a job. You know, get with it. You know, you can't have a functioning city when people don't have any money. Real quickly, you can read about this in the book. We've got a whole slew of different programs that are really cool. We're very proud of. We're not here to talk about those. I'd be happy to if you want to ask. But I want to get into the housing and the community and economic development stuff. This is the stuff where I think Mark and Tina and Lamont had in mind for me for this afternoon. We have a series of initiatives directed at housing issues. Housing for almost everybody is the biggest part of your budget. The lucky ones among us spend 30% of our income on housing. The unlucky ones are spending 50 and 70%, and we even find people who have higher housing expenses than they have total income. And they're the ones that kind of float around from place to place, and they take their kids with them, and so the kids don't stay in the same school. They move 2 or 3 times during the school year. So the affordable housing issue has been a huge issue for us, and it's a very, very tough one. Community Action Financial Services is our project to help people buy their first home. There's a great story behind this program. I can't get into all the gory details, but in the early 1990s, we documented that people of color were 5 times more likely to be rejected for a mortgage application than their white counterparts. 5 times more likely. And they were very unlikely to even apply. So you might have, 3 out of 4 people of color applying for or getting rejected, but while only 15% of white applicants. The really amazing thing was that only 4 people of color were even applying for a mortgage in the course of a year. It was that bad. People knew they wouldn't get approved, so they didn't even apply. So we did a series of projects and worked mostly with the banking industry, and in 4 years we reduced the disparity from a factor of 5 to only 30%. We literally changed the complexion of homeownership in Lehigh Valley, and that's good for our neighborhoods when people own their own home and are bought into the quality of life in their neighborhoods. Also with Community Action Financial Services, and this goes back to Lamont, really, I'm sorry, County Executive McClure, we also have been rescuing people from foreclosure. The county court system has a diversion court where you can't go through foreclosure without having an opportunity to face your attorney in a courtroom with a master and deal with the foreclosure. The lender's bar loves this program because it helps them deal directly with banks don't want to take the house, and sometimes they have no choice. So in Valley-wide, and I didn't get the number for Northampton County exclusively, we rescued 1,200 families, 1,200 homes from foreclosure. That's 1,200 blocks that didn't have their property values diminished because there was an empty house that was left with the weeds growing and not being cared for. That's 1,200 or more kids who don't have to feel when they go to school like their parents are losers because they lost their home to foreclosure. That's 1,200 people who are paying their taxes. And we then have that revenue to improve the quality of life. I'm very proud of that. We weatherize homes. I think we've estimated that since I've been at CACLV, we've weatherized 20,000 homes. It's pretty remarkable when you add it all up. So we're weatherizing about 900 to 1,000 homes a year. We also do furnace repair and replacement. That's little known. It's in crisis situations, typically 200 to 400 houses a year that we replace or repair the furnace. We do owner-occupied housing rehab. We're doing this because of the county's support and the county's encouragement. We've rehabbed 22 homes, typically 5 to 8 a year. We've spent over $100,000 per year doing that. We also do acquisition rehab resale. We try to buy properties that are dog properties, fix them up in strategically important places. We're especially interested in our boroughs. The boroughs have the same pressure on them that our cities have. They're just on a smaller scale with less resources to deal with it. And so our agency is very interested in the county's boroughs. And finally, the Lehigh Valley Community Land Trust. When we fix up these houses, we own the ground that the house is standing on. We sell the bricks and sticks, but the ground is ours for 99 years to lock in the affordability. So when the family that gets the house from us wants to sell it, they can sell it and they can even profit off the sale, but they have to sell it to another income-eligible family. So that the property for 100 years, as far as I'm concerned, that's infinity, because I'm not going to be here in 100 years, that property remains affordable for the occupant. Am I talking too long? Am I okay?
You're fine.
Am I all right? Okay. We're, as I mentioned earlier, we're really interested in people owning their own homes. I mean, starting their own businesses. You know, again, shelters are not the solution. If we can help people, even if they're just it's a hobby business where they're earning a little bit of income on the side, if that helps them pay their bills, that's a good thing. We do seminars. We have volunteers that do a lot of the work. We provide one-on-one technical assistance. Our special interest is city residents, low to moderate income people, and people of color, people who by and large are being left behind by everybody else. And as I often say, and not with any intention to diss the Small Business Development Center, but the difference between us and the SBDC is that we work with people who don't golf. Get that right? Okay. And then finally, we do financing of small businesses. We have a subsidiary called the Rising Tide Community Loan Fund. We've made about $7.5 million in loans. We've charged off about $200,000 of that $7.5 million, and we only make loans to people who can't get a loan from a bank. If we think they're bankable, we send them to the bank. We want them to be in the mainstream credit system. We're there for people who can't do that. And then there's a neighborhood revitalization effort. The primary tool that we've used is a state tax credit program called the Neighborhood Partnership Program. It provides an 80% tax credit to companies that can commit a minimum of $50,000 a year for at least 6 years, and for that to get an 80% credit. They can also take the full federal deduction, which means that if they commit $100,000 to us, their actually out-of-pocket expense is only 13 cents on the dollar. So they can tell the world that they've got $100,000 invested in our community, but the actual investment out of pocket is only $13,000. So we did this in Easton for about a dozen years. They've got a new one going on because we had a difficult time finding new investors. And the plan that we did is almost identical to the plan that they just adopted and basically taken over where we left off. We've been doing this in South Bethlehem for about a dozen or so years. We just started doing it 2 years ago in the Slate Belt. Stephen Ryder is here with me. Stephen's the director. We have a single staff person. What we did is a first ever multi-municipal neighborhood partnership. These are supposed to be single neighborhoods where a whole bunch of investment gets focused there. What that did was it meant smaller communities were going to be left behind because no single corporation is going to put $100,000 into a little borough. There's just not enough PR and marketing benefit for them. So our thinking was, why don't we get 4 or 5 of them together and approach the state and get them to do a pilot with us to test the idea so that they can apply it to boroughs throughout the Commonwealth. And they went along with it, and they're very proud of it. The secretary was in town with us just a couple of weeks ago. Slate Belt Rising, we're doing Bangor, Wind Gap, Penargil, and Portland. We've done home acquisition, rehab, resale. We've done owner-occupied rehab. We've done facade improvements. We've done streetscaping in the boroughs. And I can just show you a couple. I think this is now down to pictures, right? So part of building community is also people owning their community and being a participant. As I've always said, the highest form of self-sufficiency is citizenship. That somebody's gotten to the point where they're good enough in life that they can say to their neighbor, "Can I help you? Can I be a part of your solution?" They join the PTA. They volunteer for things and participate. So these are just a few examples. The street festival, field hockey. You might want to know what field hockey has to do with community development. Let me tell you what it does. My daughter got a $100,000 scholarship to play field hockey. It's because of Title IX. Now, she's a talented kid, obviously, but because of Title IX demanding that women have the same opportunity to play sports as men has completely changed the ball field, if you will. And Emmaus High School, that wins district every year, has for 30 years, and state championship many times. Every girl on that team goes to Division I field hockey with a scholarship. That's economic development, especially if you can get those kids to come back home as kids that have made it and succeeded in life. So we helped start a field hockey league. Joint branding between the 4 boroughs. I don't know if anybody could imagine that a handful of years ago that the 4 boroughs would agree to a common look. So when you enter Penargil, this is the sign you're going to see. And what's really cool is that, do we have a picture of the banners themselves? Those banners, if you see, they're actually 4 icons. The one on the left is Portland. The next one is Bangor. The next one is Penargil. The next one is Wind Gap. And so those boroughs have their own logo that fits into a common logo. And so you drive into Penargil, you'll see those Penargil banners on their light poles. But every one of the boroughs has that entrance, and it's a joint marketing effort to get people to understand and appreciate, hopefully come to and spend money in and invest in and maybe even move to that region. We've done new construction. That's a couple of homes we built on Pine Street in Easton. This is a couple. This is a great story. Is there any press here? Are we safe to? No press, right? Oh, wait a minute. Bernie's here. Never mind.
Wait a second.
This couple has a child who's autistic, and he's big into Marvel superheroes. And so their deli, which is located in the Ben Franklin Technology Partners building on Mountaintop campus at Lehigh University, is called Heroes.
Oh.
And because they told the son that his autism was his superpower, which was, I mean, that's unbelievable. It's such a brilliant thing for a couple to come up with, turning a deficit that most of us would consider a deficit into an asset. And so they're running their own deli. They are, I think, Argentinian. And as I said earlier, our focus is really people of color, and they're legal. They're legal. In case anybody We've done a fair amount of murals around town. This is Hayes Street. What we did in Hayes Street on the south side of Bethlehem is test an idea. You know, when you put a bunch of money into a property, you hope that the neighbors are going to look outside and say, boy, does that look great. And so, son of a gun, my property doesn't look so good. And so if they want to keep up with the Joneses, they spend some money on their property, and it kind of creates a peer pressure to do that. In a poor neighborhood, you can't count on that because people don't have a lot of money. So what we started to do was, with treating the rehab house, and both that's a triplex, and both of the end houses are in the land trust. We started putting facades on properties surrounding the rehabbed house in order to essentially create the second ripple. It's been enormously successful. Citywide home ownership declined in the 3 years prior to this by 9%, and since that it's increased in that neighborhood by 6%. And we did something like 15 facades, and we added the mural as well. So here's a few before and after. This is a facade that we did on a massive building that totally dominates the Bangor skyline, if you will, really the business district. Yeah, and we did a bunch of streetscaping there. We've done planters and park benches and all kinds of stuff. There's a couple of houses oh, that's one house, right? That's a single family.
That's a single.
That's two? Okay. All right. There's just a couple more of these. But there's a before and after. I mean, that's a Penargil house. There's another Bangor. Another Bangor. And these aren't close enough for you to see how much of a difference we really made, perhaps. But handouts for everybody. Thanks, Mark. So I hope you get those are facades that we did on the Hay Street strip. That's the one I showed you with the mural on the end. That's what on the left is what it looked like before we dressed it up. So the unit on the left and the unit on the right are owner occupied and in a land trust, and the one in the middle is an investor owned, unfortunately, unit. Maybe someday we'll be able to wrench that out of the guy's hands. So there you have it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Who did the mural work?
For you and brag a little bit. Thanks.
Who did the mural work on the building? Do you know?
We commission artists.
Okay.
But so the short answer is I'm stalling. Short answer is I don't know
That's
who
okay.
they are
in
every case.
I've seen a bunch of them on the south side, just up here.
It's done.
It's more than just there.
It's bid and all that kind of stuff. If you're coming in to South Bethlehem from I-78 and where 412 splits into 4th and Daly, there's a mural right as you enter 4th Street. That on the right was done by Philadelphia artists, and Philadelphia's got the top mural program in the country. And that was one of ours. We had a lot to do with the Greenway in South Bethlehem. Mm-hmm. We had a lot to do with the skate plaza that's on the Greenway. We put a splash park in Yasko Park in South Bethlehem. We've created 2 little pocket parks on the 700 block of East 4th Street. So we're doing we installed most of the street lights between William Street and Hayes Street on 4th Street, with and for the city. So we're in a lot of things, and hopefully you can all see the difference that we've made, at least in some form or other. So it's dangerous to let me have a mic for too long. If you're done, I'll get out of your way.
Well, I thank you very much for your time and the work that your group does. Does anybody have any questions for?
No, other than echo what Bill just said. Thank you, Mr. Jennings.
The county's been outstanding. It's not a conflict of interest. Charles was once on our board. Ron was on our board, and we think we're friends of the county and happy to be partners with you and do the kinds of things that we were just showing you.
Can I ask a question?
No, absolutely.
I'll make it a short question. You have to make it a short answer, or they'll stone us both. By the way, your PowerPoint presentation, that should be the reference point for anybody doing PowerPoint. We can actually sit here and read. I don't think there was a problem.
Thanks.
I mean, sometimes people are talking, we're going, we can't read it, it's so small. So, excellent. The second thing is, with rents going through the roof, and I mean, we don't even have to talk about poverty to talk about people having problems with rent. And unless somebody comes back from school and has a good job lined up, a really good job lined up, they probably couldn't afford to live in Lehigh Valley anymore anyway. Are you seeing that, though? Like when you're buying, when you go out and you see these properties, you have to be running into a situation where a lot of the out-of-town landlords, investors, I mean, like you talk about pride of ownership, which is great, but those guys, a lot of them, let's be honest, they don't have any pride. They just want the check. So, I mean, is it becoming more difficult for you because of the costs involved in emerging Lehigh Valley?
I would, first of all, I would suggest that we encourage our police to profile cars with New York license plates. New York license plate, you pull them over, you harass them, and hopefully they go back. I've long called New Jersey and New York's affordable housing program Pennsylvania, so it's a huge challenge, Ron. We have to get into a house and make an offer immediately because the houses are moving so quickly. And a fast-moving marketplace in real estate means an increasingly expensive marketplace. And so, yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah, we're a hot market. And
top
these guys
end
are
isn't that big of a deal. The top end isn't where the problem. The bottom. It's in the entry to maybe the second home area where the problem is really the greatest. And understand we had enough of a problem before the financial crisis. What the financial crisis did was dump a lot of people into foreclosure, meaning into the rental market. And so you took a lot of pressure on the marketplace there, and then you add a whole bunch of additional people into the marketplace. Economics 101, we've all had that class, that drives up prices. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And developing rental properties that are affordable for people is very, very difficult. And it's also a problem in the cities because a lot of people would rather send their kids to suburban schools. And, that causes, that's a whole other issue. So the challenges of the marketplace are great. I spend a lot of time bugging banks because the key to the marketplace is access to credit. And there's a federal law that requires banks to reinvest, but it really helps a lot to have a local person, keeping them the fire under their butts, and that's essentially what we do. And we could get into that discussion.
Yeah,
That'd be a good
thank
one
you.
too.
I appreciate it.
So,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody from Slate Belt Rising, do you have anything to address? Council? No? We appreciate the work you do.
Still rising.
Absolutely.
There's nothing
You got another handout? Is that the PowerPoint handout?
Oh, okay. I was going to say there's nothing else on the agenda.
Yep. All right. Well, then,
Feel good.
if nobody has any other questions, I guess that's time for adjournment.
I was glad to hear Bangor Scott.
Okay.
Already?
Meeting adjourned.
Awesome. Look at how early we are.
I had never heard that term before.
I wasn't worried. What?